Okay.
Okay, sir.
Can you hear me now, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Sorry, actually, I'm not feeling well. So our colleague, Dr. Santoshi, she will introduce yourself and you can start the technical session. We welcome you, sir, for this session. And I hope your session will be very nice to our all the participants are from the colleges. They are the professors and faculties from the colleges. So I request Dr. Santoshi, please proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So, very good morning to all of you, all the participants. This is our second day of 5-day FDP program. For this first session, we have with us Captain Satyendra Vaidya. He has served.
Satyendra, yes, sir.
Yes, Captain Satyendra Vaidya, sir. He has served Indian Navy as well as Indian Coast Guard for over more than 27 years. And he, after basically 2019, he has been undertaking the solid waste management projects, and he has his waste management, basically solid waste management company or own company basically. So from 2018 onwards, he has been doing this waste management program and taking this waste management program and serving the nation. So I request Captain Vaidya sir to deliver his lecture on solids waste management.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh and Dr. Mahapatra, for asking me to deliver a lecture. Of course, I know that I have a very strong audience, so I will just try to put in a few of my views about waste management and give you an insight into what are the problems and issues about waste management in defense establishment and on naval ships. Ma'am, I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, sir. Or shall I share?
No, I think I'll be able to share.
Okay, sir. Fine, sir.
Can you see my screen now, ma'am?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Just a minute. I can't see the screen myself. I can't see what is being shared actually. Okay, I'll continue sharing the screen in this way only rather than doing a presentation in the presentation mode. So good morning, everyone. I must thank Dr. Mahapatra and Dr. Santosh for permitting me to speak to all of you. And just having some problems with this laptop. Just give me 10 seconds, yeah. Okay, so my name is Captain Satyendra Vaidya. I have served in the Indian Navy for 27 years, and since the last 3 to 4 years, I have been involved in doing solid waste management, and I have been focusing on defense establishments in particular. So what generally comes to mind when someone talks about a defense establishment, be it the Army, Navy, Indian Navy, or the Air Force, is one visualizes clean roads, well-maintained gardens, neat and clean buildings, and generally a place which not necessarily is picturesque, but is definitely well maintained. Well, I must tell you that behind all this cleanliness, there is a lot of work which goes on, and a lot of people are involved in ensuring this neat and tidy appearance of any defense establishment. So in the next hour and a half or so, I will give you an insight in waste management. Essentially, what is waste management, principles of waste management, why do we need to manage waste, and of course, what is done in defense establishments, and what are some of the issues that are there internationally for naval ships proceeding to sea. But before figuring out uh, what is waste management, let us take a quick recap of a few basic concepts. As you're all aware, the generic definition of waste is found in the dictionary, which states that a material, substance, or a byproduct, when eliminated or discarded as no longer useful or required after the completion of a process. It essentially applies to everything that we use or consume, be it clothes, be it shoes, be it food, anything and everything that we consume. In fact, when used as a noun, it applies to non-substances also. We often say, what a waste of time it has been, etc. So waste, we need to know the definition of waste first to understand issues about waste management. In the manufacturing sector, waste is also commonly defined as an action that does not add value to the customer. Essentially, it is an unnecessary step. In a manufacturing process that does not benefit the customer. And since it does not benefit the customer does not want to pay for it. And hence, there are no profits involved in that. And so, essentially, waste in the manufacturing sector revolves all around profits. The Basel Convention, the World Environment Agreements on Waste, in the environment context, of course, there is no immediate profit or benefit to individuals as such. The benefits are to the community as a whole or mankind in general. Hence, the definition of waste as we see refers to a product or substance which has no further use. The Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movement of Hazardous Waste and their disposal was adopted in 1989. It came into force in 1992. It is one of the most comprehensive global environmental agreement on hazardous waste and subsequently other wastes too. With 188 parties, it has nearly universal membership across the world. The convention aims to protect human health and the environment against the adverse effects resulting from the generation, transboundary movement, management of both hazardous and other wastes. The Basel Convention regulates the transboundary movements of such waste and obliges its parties to ensure that such wastes are managed and disposed in an environmentally sound manner. This convention covers toxic, poisonous, explosive, corrosive, flammable, ecotoxic, and infectious wastes also. The parties also have an obligation to minimize the quantity that are transported to treat and dispose of waste as close as possible to their place of generation and to prevent or minimize generation of waste at source. So you can see, as per the UN Sustainability Development Glossary of Environment Statistics, it describes again waste as materials that are not prime products, that is products that are produced for the market, for which the generator has no further use in his or her own purposes of production, transformation, or consumption, and of which he or she wants to dispose them of. Similarly, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs Development has got a different definition. In the common man's eye, anything and everything that is unwanted or not useful is garbage or waste. However, scientifically speaking, there is nothing called as waste in the world. Almost all components of solid waste have some potential if it is converted or treated in a scientific manner. So we can see that as per the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the precise definition of what constitutes solid waste is variable. Principally, it can be considered as that material which has no further useful purpose and is discarded. It is therefore perceived to have no commercial value to the producer. However, this does not preclude it from being valued to some other party. So we can generally, now we'll talk about municipal solid waste, which is generally categorized as hazardous and non-hazardous waste. We will not discuss about hazardous waste in this talk, but we'll discuss the non-hazardous waste, which is can further be divided into municipal waste, which again has three parts, that is organic waste, packaging waste, and other materials. And then there is non-hazardous industrial waste. So this will include the hazardous waste will comprise of biomedical, agricultural, electronic, nuclear, industrial waste and all that, but we will not go that way. So first, let's see what waste management implies. Essentially, it is the collection, first the generation, then the collection, transportation, storage, and then the processing or disposal of the waste. This term usually relates to materials, services produced by human activity, and the management aids to reduce the harmful impact on humans, animals, and the environment. One must note here that waste management is different from resource recovery. These two issues normally get confused between people. So we must remember that management of waste is different from resource recovery. Resource recovery, however, is a part of the management process which aims at delaying the rate of consumption of natural resources. The term waste management usually refers to a single class, irrespective of the nature. Hence, we have different terms like solid waste management, municipal solid waste management, wastewater management, medical waste management, etc. Let us have a quick look at the principles of management. As I mentioned earlier, we are not focusing on the manufacturing sector, but on all waste that is considered harmful for the environment, like municipal solid waste and other waste generated by industry, hospitals, etc. In understanding the principles of waste management, we must first understand the hierarchy of waste, as management methods are different for different wastes and not equal when considering their environmental impact. Disposal of waste in landfills has been done for a very long time and is still widely used as a waste management tool. However, this has the biggest environmental impact. Besides requiring large amount of land, there is a possibility of leachate. Leachate is essentially the brown color liquid which is left out by decomposing material. This leachate can infiltrate the ground water and also creates a foul odor. Additionally, gases are released by the decomposing waste into the atmosphere, and also these gases are again greenhouse gases, so it aids in to some level in climate change and global warming. And the waste that is decomposing also gives rise to rodents. Hence, disposal in a landfill is the least desirable option. Waste recovery includes anaerobic processes such as digestion, incineration, and energy recovery. It can also include gasification and pyrolysis. Fuel is also made from waste, which is also referred to as refuse-derived fuel or RDF. Waste recycling means turning waste into a new substance. Ideally, the recycling should be able to create the same material. However, this is seldom possible, and the waste is converted into something else, which is a useful product or material. For example, plastic bottles are recycled to make yarn, which is then spun into clothes. Ideally, we should be recycling the PET bottles or the plastic bottles back into granules so that more PET bottles can be made and we do not have to rely on natural resources like crude oil for making fresh plastic or fresh polymers. Similarly, composting is also a method of recycling. Recycling is more preferred method as compared to the energy recovery or disposal of waste. Now coming to reuse, this implies cleaning, repairing, refurbishing whole products or spare parts. However, finding people to use these repaired or refurbished products is a problem in certain geographies. In India, we do have a considerable market for such products, and therefore we do reuse a lot of products. But with consumerism coming up and more people moving up the socio-economic ladder, there is a fear that this reuse concept will start diminishing even in our geography. The hardest of all options is the prevention of waste. This includes using less material, having appropriate designs and in the manufacturing processes, keeping products longer in use also helps in creating waste. All of you must be aware that the cell phones that we use earlier, we used to have batteries which could be removed and they could be replaced. Nowadays, the batteries come along with the cell phone, and hence, when the battery drains out, we have no choice but to dispose of this mobile phone and buy a new mobile phone. The European Union is now making it compulsory for manufacturers to ensure that the life of a mobile phone will be 10 years and parts will be replaceable, and that too not only by the manufacturer but by other agencies as well. So everywhere around the world there is a process going on to minimize the waste and to prevent creating more waste. This waste hierarchy tool is a good tool for roughly estimating the impact of waste management system and planning changes and amendments to it, amending it where required. In understanding the principles of waste management, we must first understand the hierarchy as we have just done. But the methods for different wastes are not equal when considering their environmental impact. Disposal of waste in landfills, like we have just discussed, uh, but consider a case where you have a big city like Pune or Bhubaneswar or Delhi or Mumbai, where a landfill is not available very close by. So, what do we do? Do we, try to put in so much amount of money and energy and fuel to transport this waste all over the place? So we have to see the proximity principle whenever we are disposing of the waste, the economical costs versus the benefits, because while we try to solve our problems by disposing waste and we feel that we are making a cleaner environment, we should not be polluting the environment by, say, transportation or such other like means. So whenever we are dealing with waste management, the proximity principle always comes to the forefront. We deal with the waste as near to the source as possible. For this, we need to create awareness of all the populace, all the people in the country, and we need to encourage ownership of the problem at a local level. Suppose we have wards in all cities. We have smaller towns and villages. They also have wards. So wouldn't it be better that we start disposing of our waste at initially the society level and then at the ward level, rather than telling the whole sending the full waste rather than sending full waste to one or two big landfills somewhere outside the city? Then the question arises that why do we need to manage this waste? You can see the figures on your screen. We generate approximately 62 million tons of municipal solid waste in a year. That comprises of organic waste, recyclables, paper, plastic, wood, glass. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which was launched in 2016, had the first phase of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan had the concept of open defecation-free villages and towns. The phase 2 or Swachh Bharat Abhiyan 2.0 was launched on 2nd October last year, and the aim is to make garbage-free cities. That is, keep our cities and towns clear of garbage. So they have a dashboard where you can see how much garbage has been collected, how much has been segregated. The only issue is that while 75 to 80% of it is getting collected, only about 30 odd percent, 22 to 28 is what the dashboard says, is processed and treated. The balance of it is all dumped into dump yards. And herein lies the problem. The projection is for 2031, we are going to have 100 million tons per day, and 2025 is going to, sorry, there is 20, it should be 2045, not 2025. So waste collection efficiency also is very poor, and we need to start working on collecting all this waste and, more importantly, disposing it off in a correct and proper manner. So, having just had a kind of primer on waste management, the principles, why it needs to be managed, Let us now turn to see if there are major similarities or differences about waste management in defense establishments. Defense establishment can be broadly classified into training establishments. Training establishments are those establishments which undertake professional training of officers and men, that is sailors, jawans or airmen. And if you want to know some of the common or the more known defense training establishments, there's the National Defense Academy, the Indian Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy. Then there are other academies, the Indian Military Academy, which is in Dehradun. Then there are other colleges and training establishments like the Defense Services Staff College, which is there in Kunur near Ooty. And of course, there is the College of Air Warfare in Hyderabad and the National Defense College in Delhi. So there are a whole lot of training establishments. Some are joint, some are single service, like the Defense Services Staff College in Kunur is a tri-services establishment. The National Defense Academy is a tri-services establishment, but the Indian Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy are single service. So is the Indian Military Academy. So there are various different training establishments. Then there are field areas. Field areas are basically the border areas where families are usually not permitted to stay. So these are in strategic areas. These are usually near the line of control or the line of actual control. And since families are not allowed, the spouses and children are not allowed, so the kind of waste generated out here is considerably different from what we see in cities or towns or villages or even in training establishments. Additionally, these field areas might be at high altitude. So the kind of food that is given to them or the kind of waste that is generated from there is considerably different from, say, a field area in the deserts. Similarly, in the Navy, though there is no field area as such, when the personnel embark ships and go out to sea, the whole concept of waste generation becomes not only generation but disposal also becomes very different. We'll come to that in some time. And then, of course, there are peacetime locations. A lot of establishments which we see, in our cities and towns. There are command headquarters, there are sub-area headquarters. The Navy, Army, Air Force, they all have their own commands. So these are basically large stations. These are basically large stations which have small units embedded in them. Usually they have a very big housing complex where officers stay. They have another multiple housing complexes where the Jawans and their families stay. Like, for example, the Eastern Naval Command that is there in Visakhapatnam. Now that is home to a whole lot of units. There are almost 30 or 40 units which are co-located in Visakhapatnam. And though the units are separate, the families stay in 2 or 3 locations. The officers' families stay in 2 or 3 locations. The sailors' families stay in 2 or 3 locations. There's a defense civilian accommodation that has been provided. So similarly, Indian Air Force units are also similar. The Air Force stations are huge areas in which the officers and the airmen stay. Their families usually reside along with them inside the air station. Cleanliness is, of course, a very important aspect, and garbage assumes very great importance in Air Force stations because of flying. Because whenever aircraft get into the air, if there are too many birds around, then the aircrafts can have problems. So what are the sources of waste? We'll go one by one. In a typical defense establishment, there are administrative areas which have largely offices. So the waste that is, just to clarify, when I'm talking now about waste in defense establishment, we'll be discussing about training or peacetime basis, because it's best not to go towards the field areas and at sea. At sea we will see, but field areas, since they are sensitive locations, I don't want to show you any photos from that, and we will not discuss what happens there. So typically in an administrative or a training establishment, there will be classrooms, there will be offices. This waste normally comprises of stationery, paper, and there is very little of what we call organic waste, that is wet waste. So further, you might be interested to know that most of the paper that is used in administrative offices in the armed forces is shredded. This is for security reasons because there are a lot of people interested in knowing what is happening inside defense establishments. So most of the paper that is used is usually shredded, and then it is sent. It used to be burnt earlier, but nowadays after shredding, it is separated into various parts and then sent for recycling. So also all these establishments will usually have one or more mess. The messes are again, there would be an officer's mess and there would be senior sailors or a senior Jawan's mess. There would be a junior Jawan's mess. In the army, it is referred to as JCO and NCO messes. So what is peculiar about these messes? Typically in a mess, you will have an accommodation, that is a living area and a dining area. These two areas are usually separated in most places, and the personnel staying in the mess are not allowed food into the living accommodation. So from the living accommodation, the kind of waste you will get is again dry waste, largely maybe biscuit packets or your soap packets, shaving cream, brushes, etc., etc., and maybe some newspaper, some plastic waste, etc. In the dining area, usually you have a recreation room, you probably have a table tennis room and a reading room. So maybe a TV room, and of course the dining hall and the kitchen. So this is where majority of the waste is generated. But here, largely the waste is wet waste, because whenever there is a dining hall, even small units have people in excess of 20 to 30 who are eating food out there. So a lot of the waste that comes out of the dining area is essentially wet waste, which needs different handling. Now, what has been happening to this waste all these years? Uh, okay, this I've already covered. Basically, dry waste comes out of the living accommodation, packaging, paper, and domestic hazardous reject waste. Sources of wet waste and dry waste in the dining areas. Now, what is happening all these years was that the photo you see on the bottom left of the screen is of a conventional incinerator. So what used to happen all these years is that it used to be thrown into the incinerator and it used to be lit up. But somewhere in the mid 80s, early 90s, the government made it illegal to start incinerating waste with the first signs of global warming. And now these incinerators are just lying without any use. And though waste gets dumped in that area and then it has to be collected. Uh, a lot of places, especially in cold areas, people still resort to burning waste because not only because of the heat that they require, but more importantly, there aren't very many people or organizations which are willing to take away the waste from these areas, because most of the army establishments are in far out places. It requires a lot of effort and money to cart away this waste. So we are in a process of setting up some kind of a system in these far out places where we can, collect waste for a considerable period of time and then transport it across to places where it can be processed scientifically. So now let us see about waste generation on naval ships. So what are the sources of waste generation on naval ships? What are the legacy systems? Are there any regulations, or was there a need for any regulations? What are the regulations in force, and what is the status of waste generation and disposal on Indian naval ships? So when we say Indian naval ships, there is a large difference between the type of ships that are available, not only in the Indian Navy, but across the world and even in the merchant Navy platforms. So what you can see on the left-hand side of your screen is a small patrol boat. It has a crew of about 39, 40 people, and it is just about 50 meters in length. Whereas what you see on the right hand side is the aircraft carrier Vikramaditya, which has a crew of about 1600 people, and its length is about 284, 285 meters. While the size is different, the kind of waste that is generated in both these ships is kind of similar, because it's kind of similar because there are people staying there. The work is similar. The roles, of course, of these two ships are entirely different because a carrier can stay out at sea for a very long period in time, whereas a patrol boat probably will have to return back to harbor in a couple of days. So while there is a difference in the quantum of waste that is generated on different platforms, the nature of waste also varies a bit, because what will happen is when you are on a patrol boat, you will usually take packed food with you if you're going out for a day. So food is not being cooked on the ship. Whereas an aircraft carrier or a destroyer, when they go out to sea, they go out for extended periods, maybe few weeks to a few months. So all the food is cooked on board. And because you are going to cook food, you're going to carry your dry provisions and your fresh provisions. And besides, a large number of people having food, there is going to be a lot of packing material, etc., that is going to become waste after it is used. So there is some amount of similarities, but the quantums vary considerably. And in addition to the normal food waste that we were seeing, there will be plastic, glass, tin, paper, all used as packing material. And of course, used cooking oil, because if you're cooking, say, making puris or some such thing, then there will be a lot of cooking oil which needs to be disposed. Also, in all ships around the world, there is something called bilges or bilge oil, which is essentially waste oil from engines and gearboxes, so which accumulates inside the lower spaces of the ship. This is in between the engine room floor, or engine room plating, as they call it, and the outer shell of the ship. Now, this invariably contaminates with seawater which comes in from the propeller shaft, and this oil is a problematic source. And initially, of course, it used to be dumped into the sea, but nowadays there are a lot of regulations on pumping out of bilge oil. So let's see what used to happen earlier on waste disposal about ships. So all this waste used to be dumped into the open sea, because there were a very few number of ships going out into sea, and the quantum of waste was very small. Also, in olden days, in fact, not too long ago, maybe 30, 40 years ago, also, a lot of this waste was organic in nature. So even if it was dumped into the sea, it would probably get consumed by the planktons and the fish, etc., and it would all go away. Similarly, about human waste, it would get consumed by marine life. There was very little plastic used even in packaging or other material in those days, so it was not such a big problem. Uh, the problem and harmful waste was used oil, whether it was from cooking or, like I mentioned, the bilge oil. And this was a problem for the marine life, but since, like I mentioned, it was a very small number of seafarers and smaller navies dumping oil into such vast oceans. Uh, at that point in time, it did not seem to be a problem. But as time went by, people started realizing that this is a big problem, and so something called as MARPOL, or the International Convention for Prevention of Pollution from Ships, was introduced by the International Maritime Organization. The international, what happened was in 1948, there was an international conference in Geneva, which adopted a convention which was for initially establishing the International Maritime Organization. So subsequently in 1958, this new organization met for the first time. In those days, there was a lot of concern about safety at sea, more than pollution. So the International Maritime Organization's first task was to adopt a new version of what is known as SOLAS, or the International Convention for Safety of Life at Sea. This was one of the most important of all treaties dealing with maritime safety for all nations. This included all merchant marine as well as the military naval ships. Then in 1973, the International Maritime Organization adopted something called as the International Convention for Prevention of Pollution from Ships. And why this came about in 1973, there is a bit of history to it, which I will share with you in the next few minutes. What happened was that on 18th March 1967, a super tanker called SS Tory Cannon was transiting, taking fuel from the Gulf to the west. And in the night, the captain, put this ship on autopilot, and the person who was standing watch on the bridge of the ship was not very attentive to what was happening. Now, in those days, the autopilots were not connected to GPS because there weren't any GPS systems available on ships in those days. And so essentially, autopilot was just that you were fixing the rudder angle and the speed of the ship, and the ship would continue to travel on its own without anyone to have to steer the ship. What happened was the currents that were there in the Atlantic Ocean were misunderstood by the captain or wrongly calculated. And in the morning, when the captain came onto the bridge, he realized that the ship was very close to the Isles of Sicily, and they were very close to Cornwall also, and that is between the Isles of Sicily and Cornwall. And there was a fear that the ship will run aground. So he took some decisions. He gave some orders to turn the ship around, but he forgot that the ship was in autopilot mode, and so the ship was not responding. And what happened was that the SS Tory Cannon hit some of the reefs near the coast of Cornwall, and broke into some of its tanks got ruptured, and it started leaking oil which it was carrying. It was carrying almost 100,000 tons of oil. So you can imagine the amount of oil that ship had on board. Interestingly, this ship was in perfect state. It was a new ship. It was not an old ship which had been refurbished. It was a new ship. It was one of the largest ships of the time to carry crude oil, and it had a few months before it had actually been audited for seaworthiness and had come out with grade A. So there was no material problem in the ship. There was nothing. But then once the ship hit the rocks of that Cornwall and started spilling the oil in the English Channel, that obviously the oil started floating towards the coast, and beaches were left with knee deep of sludge. Thousands and thousands of birds, thousands of birds died. All the people were extremely worried because these birds were actually scavengers. They would eat dead fish and other rubbish that was thrown on the beaches. Now these birds had died, so as a result, almost this effect of this continued for a few years actually, and the birds started. There were no birds to eat the rubbish from the beaches, so the beaches started becoming unclean. The death of the birds and marine and mammals in the first day after the spill was actually a fraction of the total deaths. And it is said that the effects of this oil spill went on for years, like 10 to 15 years. Incidentally, what happened was when the ship was, abandoned and broken, lying in the sea, it started drifting, and there was a fear that the ship would come close to the French coast. So the British government decided to actually bomb that ship, break into two pieces, and sink it, so that they thought that it would go down. There were attempts to put all the oil that was there in the ship on fire. They did about 5 to 6 sorties by different aircraft for bombing it. They used napalm. They tried everything to, prevent this oil spill, but it was not really very successful. And the effect of this oil was not only on the surface, but over a period of time, it was found that it went right till the bottom of the food chain, to the planktons, to the invertebrates that live in sediments, mussels, clams, fish, birds, mammals, everywhere. It had, caused havoc in that part of the world. So, as a result of this, came the international conventions. The International Maritime Organization introduced a series of measures to prevent these tanker accidents and to minimize their consequences. It tackled the environmental threat caused by routine operations such as cleaning of oil cargo tanks and disposal of engine room waste, which I was mentioning, the bilge oil, etc. These all came under regulations now, because people came to know the enormity of the problem in case of an accident, and these in tonnage terms, the disposal of engine room oil is actually much more than one or two tankers running aground, because there are so many ships that are sailing the sea, and if each one starts throwing their engine room oils into the sea, it is a huge problem. So this was regulated. The International Convention for Prevention of Pollution from Ships of 1973, known as MARPOL, it was modified in 1978, and it is known as MARPOL 73/78. It covers not only about engine room waste, but it covers carriage of toxic substances, standards of packing, marking, etc. And like you can see here, the annex of engine room wastes was, it started with the engine room waste, then there was toxic substances, standards of packing, marking. This Annex 2 came into force in April 87, and gives the discharge criteria for liquid or toxic substances, either solid or liquid or gaseous. It includes everything. Then Annex 3 came into force in July 92, and it gave the standards for packing, marking, labeling, documentation, stowage, quantity, subtraction, division. Because what happens is, if a ship has a problem and it has to dispose of some packing into some material into the sea, this standard of packing ensures that we come to know that who has dumped their cargo into the sea, and it is very easily traceable. Then came Annex 4, which was about pollution due to sewage from ships. This came in 2003. And Annex 5, which is one of the most important annexes now from a perspective of global warming and garbage, came into force on the last day of December 1988. It actually gives the distance from land in which materials may be disposed of, and subdivides different types of garbage and marine debris. So it is kind of giving you what kind of garbage can be disposed at what distance from the shore. The requirements are obviously much strict in special areas or close to the coast. But one of the most important features of this Annex 5 of MARPOL 73/78 is that there is a complete ban on dumping of plastic into the ocean. Then Annex 6 came into force in 2005. This now introduced a requirement for air pollution by ships, that is emission of gases by ships, because this was uncontrolled, and so now all the ships have these scrubbers and filters before their smoke is let out into the atmosphere. Now, since we are discussing solid waste, I will give you a brief of what is included in Annex 5 of MARPOL 73/78. So you can see the garbage types: plastic, including synthetic, ropes, fishing nets, garbage bags, etc. Disposal is prohibited at sea. It is just banned. Then you have floating dunnage, lining, packing materials. These are basically made of jute usually. Dunnage is all material that is made from jute or coir. And in special areas it is prohibited, but it is permitted if the ship is more than 25 nautical miles from the coast, then you can dump these things into the sea. Similarly, paper, rags, glass, metal bottles, crockery, or other similar items can be disposed if the ship is away from nearest land by about 12 nautical miles. That is, if it's more than 12 nautical miles from the nearest land, then this can be dumped into the sea. All other garbage, of course, in special areas, this is prohibited. Other garbage, including, rags or which have been broken down or torn, those kind of things are permitted, provided it is comminuted. That is, it has been crushed or shredded. Then it can be disposed 3 nautical miles away. Food waste which has not been shred or which has not been ground can be dumped only 12 nautical miles away from land. And if it has been ground or comminuted, then it can be thrown at 3 nautical miles from the coast. So you see that this regulation, Annex 5 of the regulation for MARPOL, actually gives a very detailed description of where and how what can be thrown into the sea. And this, like I said, is applicable not only to the merchant marine, but this is equally applicable to all vessels of war, be it the Indian Navy or the American Navy or any navy, that any seagoing vessel that is there in the sea or oceans. So what do Indian naval ships do? They are all in compliance with MARPOL now, and we don't even throw our materials out at sea any longer. About 15 years ago, when 20 years ago, when I had recently joined the Navy in the early 90s, that time we would go and dump our waste into the sea. And even then we would take a precaution, like if there were flying operations going on, then no waste was to be dumped into the sea, because what happens is if you dump food into the sea and you have flying operations, then you will have a bird menace. So, but other than that, there were no restrictions. We would just go and throw it into the sea. Nowadays, since MARPOL is being very closely monitored, we've got internationally there is better monitoring of what ships are doing at sea. So the Indian Navy brings back all its used material, whether it is packing material for food or spares. Even the used oil is kept in containers. If there is any scrap that is generated while repairs are carried out at sea, then those scraps, stationery, paper, everything is kept in the ship first. And when the ship comes to harbor, the material is removed. It is kept in specified areas in the ports, and then authorized agencies are made to collect this waste and taken back. Only thing that gets dumped into the sea as of now is food, and that too in compliance with the MARPOL regulations. If the ship is out, and naval ships normally operate more than 12 nautical miles. So it is the food that is dumped into the sea, because it is of course useful to the marine life also. So the rest of the stuff gets brought back to harbor, and then it is disposed of in a scientific manner. There are a lot of ongoing projects in defense establishments, like in the Indian Navy in Cochin. There is a what we called as a material recovery facility. So initially it was started. It started about 3 years ago, and initially it was meant only for naval houses. But I am told that now they collect plastic from the surrounding civilian areas too. So what they do is they get the plastic here, they clean it, they wash it and shred it and convert it into granules. So this is a kind of a social initiative taken up by the Indian Navy. Similarly, in the army, there are a lot of places where composting is carried out. Even in high altitude areas, if you go to places like Ladakh, you will find some units doing composting. Of course, the composting is not natural. What they do is with organic waste composters, where a certain amount of heat is provided to the waste to help it compost. Then most of the army units in the field areas have been given baling machines. So they all the recyclable waste that they have, they bale it into compact bricks, and then there are agencies which collect these baled plastic, paper, tin, whatever is there. A few naval bases have also experimented with biogas plants, though biogas plants are a bit maintenance intensive. You need qualified manpower to run it, but nevertheless, they are running biogas plants. In Jamnagar and Lonavala, there are composting units, which are natural composting units, which are running well for the over the last 5-6 years. There has been a big drive for collection of segregated waste in Port Blair. The Navy again was in the lead in this. Of course, now it is a tri-services command, so all three services are in the lead. As you know, Port Blair is a very scenic place, and the islands around it are also very beautiful. So there was a big movement carried out there to ensure that waste is segregated and no plastic is dumped into the sea as far as feasible. In addition to defense establishments, which are kind of controlled by the men in uniform or the person in uniform, there are 62 cantonment boards in the country. These cantonment boards come under the administrative control of the Ministry of Defense and hence are part of the defense establishments. They have their own bylaws, and in 2018 they were all asked to amend their bylaws to include solid waste management. These bylaws, of course, the inclusion of the solid waste management procedures was largely based on the solid waste management rules of 2016. Initially, what they did was they asked the Delhi Cantonment Board to frame model bylaws. They were examined by different people and some waste management experts. And once they realized that these bylaws are suitable, then other cantonment boards like Secunderabad or Khadki or Pune or whichever other cantonment boards were handed over this document, and they were told to implement solid waste management into their bylaws, which makes it mandatory for these cantonment boards to collect waste from cantonments from the areas under their jurisdiction and treat it scientifically. Of course, like we all know, it is more easier said than done. But nevertheless, at least it is part of the rule book now, and slowly but surely, most of the cantonment boards, like the urban local bodies, are now looking at ways and means of not throwing all the waste into the landfills, but of collecting and disposing them. From our side, we are working with the Pune Cantonment Board as well as the Khadki Cantonment Board. We have set up 3 composting facilities with the Khadki Cantonment Board, and the aim is to ensure that they run, because invariably after it is set up, after a few months or a couple of years, the facility kind of shuts down. But we managed to keep the Khadki Cantonment Board facility running for the last 3 years, and we hope to set up something for the Pune Cantonment Board as well. Now, all of you, of course, must be very familiar with this gentleman on screen. He is none other than Dr. Edward Deming, an American statistician, professor, author, lecturer, consultant, and he's perhaps most well known for his plan, do, check, act cycle, which is also referred to as the Deming cycle. And of course, his most famous quote is, "In God we trust, all others bring the data." This is actually extremely true for waste management, especially in our country. A country as diverse as ours, with habits and not only food habits but customs and way of living varying almost every 40 to 50 kilometers. it is said that the language in our country changes every 40 to 60 kilometers. Of course, there are minor differences, but if you travel along any direction, every 60 kilometers, you will see slightly different language that is being used with people. So if the language is so different, you can imagine how different the waste would be in our country, say from Gujarat to Nagaland or from Jammu and Kashmir to Tamil Nadu. There's a huge difference in all this waste. Now, the bigger problem is that there is very little data. When we saw the waste management hierarchies earlier on, it is very essential to know what kind of waste is being generated, and only then will we know how to dispose it of the thing which I mentioned about proximity disposal and economic versus benefit advantages that we have to see. So for this you require data, and most of the data that we have is in our country about waste is outdated. Invariably what happens is someone does a research project in some small geography, like maybe a small part of a city, and then they publish that data, and everyone just latches onto that data as if it is data for their city. I agree that it is a template, but we have noticed that this extrapolation of such data actually does not help, because it does not kind of gel with data that is available, or it does not gel with the actual situation that is there on ground in different places. So, and we had a first-time experience of this. We did a big waste management project in the National Defense Academy last year, and some of the peculiarities of a defense establishment as against a ward of a city or town is that there is a huge amount of floating population. By floating, I mean there are transfers every 2 to 3 years. Obviously, they don't happen at a given period. So there are a lot of people coming into the station. There are a lot of people leaving the station almost every month. The defense services which we pride on is probably the the most mixed community that you can have in society today. We have people from all walks of life, all nooks and corners of the country, and as a result, the food habits are varying. You have a block of say 20 houses. You probably have people from all the states, at least 20, if not 20, at least 10 different states or 15 different states in that one block. Again, customs and traditions are different. So this again results in use of various material, I would say, which after use is thrown away and then becomes waste. So these are an extremely peculiar thing which happens only in defense establishments. It happens to some extent, I would say, in universities, because a lot of our universities have a very mixed population. People like you all who teach in universities also, go from one university to the other. But other than that, I have not seen any similarity of such a mixed community in anywhere in our country. So as I was mentioning, in April, May last year, we did a waste characterization study. This was based on the peculiarities that we saw in the National Defense Academy, and or in particular, but defense establishment in general. So the National Defense Academy, which is here in Pune, is spread over a campus of about 7,000 acres. And it is one of the unique institutions in the world which trains officers, trains young boys till now, and very soon girls also would be trained to become officers in all the three services of the Indian Armed Forces, that is the Army, Navy and the Air Force. Interestingly, it is the first such establishment to be started worldwide, and of course other countries have now got these institutions all over the place. But a tri-services establishment housing all the three services is a first of its kind in the world. Consequently, it has 4 messes. There is an officers mess which largely caters to the teaching staff, the administrative staff, the officers who are posted to NDA for teaching the cadets or handling the administration and security duties. Then there is JCO's mess or a senior Jawan's mess, and there is a junior Jawan's mess. And of course, there is the majestic cadets mess, which can feed 1800 cadets at a time. And there is no buffet there. It is all a sit down meal. And the mess caters for 1800 cadets to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner on a daily basis. Obviously, the waste generated from the cadets mess itself is a lot. When we analyzed this thing, we realized that just the cadets mess generates about 600 to 800 kilos of wet waste in a day. Of course, the plastics and the small circle on the left-hand side is where the dry waste of the cadets mess has been collected. And along with Dr. Joshi, I did assessment of the waste, and the results were very surprising. So we did our case study as against the figures available in Pune. Like I said, the data is often very skewed. And if you can see that the wet waste that we did in NDA was almost 70% of the total, whereas in Pune it was only 51%. And we had a large number of hazardous waste, that is the domestic hazardous waste as compared to Pune. But this could be because a lot of young officers are posted in NDA to give them an introduction to training methods. And they usually have small children. And so the quantum of nappies, I think, is much more as compared to what you find in a normal area in Pune. So this is where I was saying that, it's all about gathering data, because if you don't have the proper data, then there is going to be an issue about how you are going to handle this waste. And there is a very scientific way of going about it, but unfortunately it is not being done in our country as a whole. We are trying on our part to handle defense establishments, analyze their waste, and find aggregators who will cart away all the recyclable waste. And we are also making efforts to compost the waste in house as against burning it or convert it into biogas. So with this, I have come to the end, and I would like to leave you with a quote from the UN Division of Sustainability Development, which says that the amount of waste reflects on society's production and consumption patterns. It is an indicator on the amount of waste generated, a first approximation of the environmental pressure on air, water, and land resources. The type of waste and waste handling facilities will, of course, greatly influence the actual impact. This is what I was mentioning. A sustainable waste management program has to strive to minimize the amount of waste, maximize the amount of reuse and recycling, and promote appropriate waste disposal and treatment. So with this, I have finished. If there are any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Yes, participants, if you are having any queries, then you can ask. Yes, Vishal, Dr. Vishal, you can ask.
Dr. Vishal, your mic is on mute.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, I have a question regarding whether we see most of the all industry people are able to produce lot of goods along with a lot of marketing strategies they are adapting to tempt the public. My question is regarding whether the companies should be taken into account for also collecting and recycling the material. And also, yes, sir.
No, as I understand, you are saying that about the EPR part of it, is it that the company should be responsible for recycling also?
Yes, sir. Like products are, however, they are released for consumers, but as well as consumers should be also given the option of if you return up the same waste to us, then there will be some reward points. Such motivations can lead to like stoppage the waste that has been dumped on oceans or on our ground also.
Yes, Dr. Vishal. In fact, in the olden days, like when I was growing up in the 70s, we actually had what is now termed as a deposit return system, and it was for almost everything, whether you bought a Coke bottle or you bought an oil tin. We could go to our grocer, the local bania would take that oil tin back, he would take that Coke bottle back. Uh, I think somewhere down the line, down the years, we forgot how to do that, and we started throwing all this waste. So yes, we are looking at this very actively. The problem is twofold actually. One is we tried to work out a deposit return system for plastic bottles. Now, what is happening is that the cost of collection and transportation of these plastic bottles is actually more than the actual cost of making a new plastic bottle. So you know how we are in a country. In our country, we will always find some jugaad to make more money. So the fear is that if you tell someone that you get me 20 plastic bottles and I will give you 10 rupees or I will give you 15 rupees, the problem is I can manufacture 40 bottles for those 15 rupees. So there is a fear that there will be more manufacturing of virgin plastic bottles just to get money from this return system. That is point number one. Second point is that when we have this large unregulated kind of workforce, which are the rag pickers, uh, they also know that they get money for heavier items like plastic bottles and cans and such things, and they don't get any money for plastic packets. So also that rag picker, when we were speaking to them, they know that if they collect say 50 bottles, it weighs about 1 kilo or half kilo or whatever, but they don't know how many plastic packets they have to collect to make it 1 kilo. If you see the difference in the rates of PET bottle which the rack picker, if he gives back 1 kilo of PET bottle, he gets about maybe between 8 and 15 rupees depending on the geography. But he will get just 2 rupees or 3 rupees for plastic packets. So obviously he is not interested in collecting those. Having said that, there have been experiments done in Goa where a group of shopkeepers was convinced to collect milk packets, and in return the customers were given coupons, and these coupons they could use in those 10-15 shops, grocery shops that were there, to buy whatever they want. And I forget the rate, it was I think to the tune of some 50 rupees or 30 rupees for a kilo of plastic packets, the milk packets I'm talking about. And similarly, I think it was about 15 rupees for a kilo of plastic bottles or something. The criteria being that they have to be cleaned and submitted. We are also working on a pilot. It is in the inception stage as of now. We are also working on a pilot to see if we can have these plastic bags tagged in a certain way, either by RFID or by I don't know, any other digital watermark or whatever we can, so that first of all it is accounted for. When it comes back, we know that bag has come back. So yes, there is a lot of work going on, not so much in our country, but elsewhere in the world. There is a lot of effort going on to see how we can return these used plastic, post-consumer plastic waste as it is called. Because if that succeeds, then I think we'll be on top of this problem of littering and wasting it. Also, you must understand that plastic is collection of waste is still not looked at as a collection of plastic waste is not looked at as a service that is provided to you. So we don't want to pay them. That will have to change, I think, going forward. Yes, Doctor.
I guess, sir, the PM Modi has already imposed the tax of 0.5% annually on all of us, which in the form of what do you say, the municipal taxes or building taxes. We already seen that there is some charges, a small tiny charges has been collected from us for collecting all this, providing this service for cleaning the environment. And moreover, sir, like many of the researchers in our country is also looking for reusing and recycling. Like there are already developed the worm which can consume the plastic. They have already developed a procedure through which they can convert the polythene or any plastic material into the reusable fuel. So where do we lack? Either we lack in funding or we lack any motivation from the our government institutions.
See, it is a mix of both. Unfortunately, since this sector is completely unregulated at this point in time, I am talking about the whole waste management sector. There is a lot of unregulated issues that are going on. The first thing in this is, we have to have awareness. Like after that last Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the open defecation, I would say, is almost 80 to 90% successful. So you don't see people defecating on the roads as was maybe 10 years ago. So we have to start educating the children, because as they grow up, they will understand the problems that they are creating or we are creating for them. Funding to an extent is not a problem. I would feel if someone is wanting to do the right kind of research or the right kind of intervention, funding will be available. The problem is finding agencies who are willing to do serious interventions and truthful interventions in this place. We used to conduct some information, education, communication kind of series of lectures, and we had got a contract from one gentleman, and then he was asking us to do one lecture for 3 agencies. And we asked him, why are there 3 agencies? So he says, no, I've got contract from 3 agencies, and you all do it. So we realized that there was something wrong in this, and we asked him to get us letters from each of the agencies saying that they don't have a problem of doing these lectures together. And so he backed out, and we gave back his money, and we told him that we cannot do this kind of a lecture. We will do 3 of them if you want, but then you have to part with your money for 3 lectures. So what I'm trying to bring out is it's a lot happening. A lot of this thing is happening today. Unless the sector gets really regulated and there is good oversight, it will take some time. Technologically, I am not really qualified to comment in this August gathering, but I am sure if we could find vaccines, etc., and send a mission to Mars, I don't see why we can develop systems and markings or refillable technology for our plastics that we use.
So what I can imagine is, just a thought from my side that like how the black money was curbed on 8th November of 2016 by imposing like what is it, 1,500 rupee notes were banned. Similar way, a similar drive can be also initiated so that the people who will be bringing out and collecting the waste and submitting on some places or depositing in landfills and giving some motivation to people that at a time we can clean our society and lead a beautiful life.
Yes, very true, doctor. We are in the process of that. In fact, from small bits from our side, what we do is we organize these one-time, waste collection drives. So we've done it for 2-3. What we realized is we did it for societies first. Like just last month, we had a e-waste collection drive where we appealed to the citizens saying that, you just keep your e-waste together in one location in your society and we will come and collect it. You don't have to go anywhere. Similarly, we'd run a drive which can be replicated very easily actually. We'd spoken to one company called Eaton in Pune, and we gave a kind of presentation to the employees, and we said that whoever is willing to join this program can join, and on a given day, about a month later, we went to their houses and collected all the waste that they had, not just plastic. We collected e-waste, we collected plastic, glass. So a lot of them had old clothes to give. So we collected those old clothes and then gave it to another NGO, who distributes these clothes. So, like I mentioned, there are smaller level interventions that are happening, and the hope is that as more and more people get aware, we will probably be in a better position, where people will think it as a personal responsibility to clean and discard this waste.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? So participants, if you are having any further queries, then you can clarify from Captain Vaidya. Okay, I don't think they are having any further queries. So I thank Captain Vaidya sir. The session was very interesting, and you have covered all these scopes of waste management and how those waste that particularly generates in defense establishments in a very easy and nice way. Thank you, sir. The session was very interesting and informative. It was full of learning, and I'm sure our participants, whoever has listened to you, have learned and they have a lot to take with them. Thank you, sir. Once again, I thank for sparing your time for addressing our participants.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, my apologies for the initial glitches in the presentation. But I must say that it's indeed a privilege to, speak with so many doctorates in the audience. I would have loved to actually meet everyone in person. And like I mentioned, there is a lot that the CIPET as a community can do in this field. Not just in polymer technology, but like Dr. Vishal was mentioning, in the post-marketing technology as well. And I will get in touch with you all. I have a few ideas which can be researched.
Yes.
Maybe I will get in touch with you all and kind of brainstorm my ideas. And then, of course, it is up to you all to figure out how to make those products.
Yes, sir, that would be great. In fact, yes,
I
CIPET is doing a lot in this way also, and we are looking forward to get some information and help from you also in this regard. So it will be indeed pleasure if
Right.
you can. Yes, you can
I will
help.
definitely share my thoughts. I'll share them with Dr. Joshi, who spoke yesterday, and then we can take it forward. And
Yes.
once again, I thank you very much for inviting me here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and addressing our
Not at all, ma'am.
students. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So participants, we can join after a break, like there is a 30 minutes break. Then at 12, we will again join for another session of this FDP. You people, please mark your attendance, and the Google form is shared here. I think you have got this Google form. So there, just mark your attendance for session 1.
गुड़गांव यूनिवर्सिटी नहीं निमराना ये निर्वाण यूनिवर्सिटी का है कि कहाँ का है?
Yes, sir. Sir, what is not there? Yes.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, yesterday's morning session link was missed by me. Can you please make any kind of arrangement for marking my attendance?
No, it is not required. If you have missed one session, that is fine. But the session, we will be sharing the link when the session is going on. We won't share later.
Ma'am, reason is any single glitch in my network or my bio break, the messages missed, and they are not in the hierarchy.
It's fine, no worries. It is not that like hard and fast, but you try to attend all the sessions, and because
I'm attendant. That is the real pain. That I have attended a session and my attendance has not been marked. That is the real pain.
But see, if
If
I'll
I have
try.
not attended that session, then I'm not that culprit that I have not attended even. I'm not even logged in,
Okay,
and I'm
okay,
not.
okay,
Then I'm
fine,
asking
fine.
for
You
that.
have attended, so you have got the information, you have learned something from this FDP. That is enough, no?
Ma'am, the certificate at the end of the day also matters, and I guess 70 or 80% of attendance is mandatory for this my certificate.
Yes, yes. 80% attendance is mandatory, so you just try to attend all other sessions.
Yeah, I'm attending all the sessions, but before this attend, so my whole focus is from learning is actually on this in-call
Sir,
messages that I
sir.
have to mark
See,
the
sir,
attendance.
we are
Please
trying.
consider
We
my
are
problem
trying.
also.
Yes, sir. We are understanding your problem. We are trying to get the attendance during the session. That is like our what I'll say method. And
Ma'am, I
if
got your method, but I have missed my. I have missed. And
okay,
if I remember
fine,
precisely
sir.
that last
Fine,
evening
sir.
near 4 o'clock, everybody was typing one message only that they have missed the morning session attendance.
Okay, fine. So for one session we can take care of, no problem. But you try to attend or mark your attendance in other sessions.
So
Because
please
if
consider
I'll
my
share
morning
that
attendance.
link, no, sir. If I'll share that link or try to among you all, then it will be like everyone are present. Then what is the point of taking attendance? You
I
might
got your
you
point,
might
but ma'am,
have.
in evening only, in 1 hour later
Sir,
only,
it's
we were
fine. Sir,
mentioning that
it's
morning
fine. No,
session was
no
missed. That
issues,
is my
sir. At
concern.
the
Okay, it's
end,
all right.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's fine. And feedback form, I haven't shared anything till now, and there is no such in your AICTE ATAL platform. There is this participant login. When you are logging through this participant, then you might be seeing one feedback form. So through that, after this 5 day will be over, after that you will be giving your feedback in AICTE platform. Then after only you will be able to download your certificate, participant certificate. So feedback form we won't upload there, you have to give there. Okay, sir. And in our attendance sheet also there are 2-3 questions are added where you can give your feedback. So there is no separate feedback will be given. Am I clear?
Yes.
Am I clear then? So we'll be joining at 12 for next session. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes, try to rejoin at 12.